Express. My name is Martha Krensolakwa. Today we've been talking about so many issues, and one of the key issues that have come up that we've talked about is the Asamoah sex scandal. Unfortunately, that is not the discussion today, but one issue that has come out of that also is the fact that a woman, a 23-year-old woman who is not the woman at the center of this controversy, is all over. Her picture is all over as the victim of the alleged sodomy act. How did she become the victim when she wasn't the victim? Perhaps somebody just Googled, searched, and found a picture with a name that sounded or similar to that of the victim. And that's how she has become popular today. That has to do with data protection, and we'll be back to talk more about that. Perhaps so you know how to protect your data. It's so easy and yet technical. I'll get educated, and you will also know what to do from here on. But before we start the discussion, we'd like to give you a short documentary on what you can do to protect your data. The documentary is not ready. We'll come back and then we watch the documentary. Take a short break from here.
Good people of Ghana, you give out your personal information like your name, telephone number, email, etc. for various activities. You fill forms every day. You use the social media. You share your personal information on various mediums. But do you know where your information goes? Are you privy to who has access to your information? Do you know what your information is used for? Are you at the receiving end of unsolicited text messages, emails, or telephone calls? Are you concerned about how your personal information is used? Have you been disturbed, harassed, embarrassed, discriminated against, lost money or other valuables, or even your professional reputation from the violation of your personal space? Are you sharing, using, or processing another person's information without their consent or knowledge? If you identify with any of the questions I just asked, it is to you I speak. Our dignity as a people cannot be guaranteed without the protection of the privacy of our homes, properties, correspondence, and communications. It is for these reasons that the Data Protection Act 2012, Act 834, was passed by our Parliament. The Data Protection Act guarantees the protection of our privacy and personal information by regulating how our information is processed by others. The Data Protection Act also set up the Data Protection Commission to educate you and enforce the provisions of the Act. Know your right. Protect your information.
For more information, contact us at Room 51, Ministry of Communications Building, PO Box 7195, Cantonment, Accra. Telephone 0302 631 455. Fax 0302 631 477. Website www.dataprotection.org.gh. Email info@dataprotection.org.gh.
We're back on PM Express, and I have been joined in the studio by technical people who understand what data protection is about, and I am just here to find out what it's all about so I can also take some cues and know what to do next when it happens to me. I have to my extreme left Teki Akwete-Falconer, who is the Executive Director of Data Protection Commission. Welcome to our studios.
Thank you.
Then I also have Maximus Ametogo, who is a technology analyst, to give us more detail about what we should know when it comes to data protection. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start off with what data protection is. What's data protection, Tiki?
Well, essentially, data protection, as the name sounds, usually would relate to protection of any data and it would come in by way of technical and even physical measures that we put in place to protect the data. But specifically speaking in Ghana, if you're talking about legislative framework, which is why I'm here, data protection more relates to the protection of personal information, that is information that relates to an individual or information from which an individual can be identified. So when we're talking about data protection, we're talking about levels of security or protection that must be accorded to personal information.
So when we talk about data, mine data, what makes up mine data?
Anything, your name, anything from which you can be identified from, your email address, your telephone number. It could even be a message, a simple message, but through the message you can be identified. It could be your location, where through the location I can know that you are the person in question here. Your picture, your image as well.
Okay, so if everything you said is about my data, then I am already out there. It's public. Everything about me is public. Or much of the things you mentioned, I think we can get on the internet. So my data is public. Should I be worried?
If you have your data, which is public, you should to some extent be worried. But of course, the laws we are talking about is looking at the fundamental law of the land, which is the 1992 Constitution that guarantees every Ghanaian and everyone living in Ghana the right to the privacy of their communications. So ideally, everyone has that right. Even a public figure like you has that right. The only thing is that once you're making your information public, you must be cautious of what information you want to put public and then what information you want to hold back.
Let's talk about the Data Protection Act. Why are we doing that now?
I think it's better, late than never. Other jurisdictions have been doing this for decades. In our country, I believe the call to protect data became really alarming with the advent of technology and the growth of technology. And as you are well aware, we are very comfortable now with using all these technologies, and it's very easy on these platforms to either to share, someone's personal information without even, going back to them or getting any kind of consent from them. So with the advent of technology and the way the country is growing, government thought it was right to actually look at data protection as an issue for Ghanaians now.
Okay, so at what point are we now? Have we started implementing something?
Yes, the law itself went through a process. It started as far back as 2008, and in 2010 it was submitted to Parliament and went through the parliamentary processes. It was eventually passed by Parliament in 2012, that is May, but the law itself became effective in October. And after October, the board was commissioned in November, which is chaired by the retired Supreme Court Justice, Justice Dateba. So we are an 11-member board that is wholly, most of the time, represented by institutions like the Bank of Ghana, the NCA, National Information Technology Agency, and the like. But it's been in operation more or less since November 2012, yes.
Maximus, your initial comments about data protection and why are we doing this now? So you're nodding to most of the things you were saying.
Of course, it's from the commission, so I have to nod to it. I think it's very necessary. Basically, data protection is to just give limits or permissions as to how a person's data must be used, based on the person's, what do you call it, permission, agreement or person's permission. And when it's necessary, the law can also demand for your data when it comes to crime and other stuff that it needs to be done. And it has to be done legally.
Okay.
Now, the whole concept of technology and then social media opening the back end to the front end user. Now it's pushing a lot of content there for people to consume. And sometimes, like you introduced, somebody's picture was mistakenly used for a different person. How does that person get protected? Okay, so we need a data protection so far as we are dealing with data. And we are moving into a future where artificial intelligence, like as the expert would say, is going to rule. We're going to make a lot of decisions based on data. And a lot of things will be data-driven stuff. But data too must be guided. So you must limit the use of data. You must also create boundaries around data.
Especially looking at how we're going now.
Yeah.
It sounds so impossible for me, as if it can't be done. I don't know.
I think that the success of data protection wholly depends on the individual, especially because, like I started from the beginning, it's a human right. And so we are starting from the basis of creating awareness. So once people become aware of the extent to which, you know, we open ourselves up by using some of these platforms, we become more conscious. Of course, a body like the Commission is also there to protect the interest, to also enforce the law. So in situations where someone feels helpless, you know, you can make a complaint to the Commission to investigate if there are any data protection breaches. The Commission can step in and then, you know, take certain actions to stop the you know, violation of your data. But ultimately, data protection rests on you and I. You know, I always say that once you're in your bedroom and you decide to put whatever picture or videos on Facebook, I have no control over what you decide to do with your information. The only thing that we can do for you as an institution, which is what we're doing, is we're constantly driving, you know, the message down to the ordinary person that just as you will not leave your door open for just anyone passing by to enter your home, it is practically the same thing. The only thing is that with the internet, you're opening your door to the whole world. Okay. So you must be careful on what information you put out there and how. You know, it would surprise you. There was a day I went to Instagram to just do some basic checks on Ghanaians who I know are on Instagram, you know, and in less than 5 minutes, I had picked on a lady, and I knew she was married by the photos she was posting. I knew she had 2 children. I knew the ages of the children. I know the birthday of one of the child. I know that they either have a business in a particular area or they work and this is all in less than 5 minutes of going through a series of pictures that the person has posted.
Okay, so what you mentioned about human rights tells me it comes with obligations.
Yes.
One of them is just what you've said. Just make sure you don't put certain things out there. It's one of the obligations.
Yes.
What other obligations do I have to protect my data?
Well, the obligations, as has been categorized under the law, falls under 2 parts. Of course, there's an obligation always on you, the individual, to protect your information. But the law calls on what we call the data controllers. Okay. These are essentially those who collect personal information to also protect the information. So there's a lot of obligations on the data controllers, and these even include the media houses. You know, so you cannot just collect any information and use it. Essentially, there are basic principles that before you collect a person's information, it must be with their consent. If it is not, then it must fall within the exceptions that are provided for under the laws, okay. You know. But otherwise, you need the person's consent to process the information. Once you collect an individual's personal information, you have to make sure that you protect the information. So whether you're putting it in a computer or a manual filing system, you need to ensure that there is adequate security to protect the information of that individual that you're collecting. And at any point in time, the individual can come back to you and say that, listen, I don't want you to process my information anymore. And they have that rights under the law. So immediately you should cease the processing of that personal information. So those are some of the obligations. The individuals also have, of course, they have the right to stop you from processing their information if they don't want to. And one obligation I didn't mention is that you always have to specify the purpose for which you are collecting the information from any individual.
Like an agreement we're coming to.
Yes, you always have to specify. And you cannot use the information outside of the purpose. So if for any reason, let's say you took, let's use the example of this lady's picture that is out there. If someone else took that picture and let's say a media house took it to use it for another purpose, and now the information, because the name is similar, they're using that information for a purpose which is different from what they took it for, they have to go back to her to ask for her consent, because she would not have consented to the use that you are putting the personal information to. So that's also another thing. And of course, when there are breaches, the individual has the right to compensation.
Okay.
And then they have a right to complain to the commission. When it comes to compensation, though, we, the commission, do not have rights now to issue out compensation, but they can go to court to enforce that right, which is guaranteed under the laws.
Okay, so we'll take a break from here, and when we come back, we'll find out how safe your data or my data is with the data processor.
Okay, I'll look at you.
All right, so we're back on PM Express, and we're talking data protection this evening. And I want to know, is my data safe with the data processor? Should I ask her? I was bringing it to you.
Okay, for me, the data processor, like she said, is supposed to work within the law, okay? So the amount of information I give to the data processor, and then the purpose for which I give that particular data must be within the laws that govern my data.
But it's
data
another
protection.
human being.
Yeah, of course. And the thing is, the extent of data that I also give, if I give you every data about myself for you to use, or even make my data public on other platforms and somebody gets it, they can use that data. That particular data is not protected. So within the law, we have that where people can have access to the data that you make public on other platforms that they can use. There's no protection on it. So if you are giving data to some data collector, for example, you must know the extent of protection they can give that particular data, and if they have the integrity to even uphold the particular purpose for which you are agreeing to give your data.
So it's like I'm signing a contract.
Of course, yes.
But if I don't know this?
Yes, what we try to do, which is why an institution like ours is very important, is that as you're well, my grandmother in the village may be using Facebook. They may not very well be aware. They may be receiving unsolicited text message and they are not aware. One of the ways in which the law is trying as much as possible to ensure the protection of personal information is to set up the register. Okay. This is a register that is supposed to be a register of all data controllers. So anybody who collects personal information, it may even include individuals who collect large amounts of personal information. And aspects of this were mandated by law to make aspects of this register public. Okay. So, in fact, we've started the registration process. So from the 31st of July, anybody at all can visit our website and then search for whether it's an individual you are dealing with, or a corporate organization, or a government body that you're dealing with. You can go online and verify the data protection status. So that's one way of knowing how safe. And what they do is that to register with us, you have to provide us, the law mandates that you provide us with adequate security measures in place to protect the personal information that you're collecting. Without that, we will not register you. So once you go online, and that kind of gives you the first level of assurance that at least there's the framework within which the data can be. And those who are mandated to register are not just individuals or companies locally registered in Ghana. But even if you are outside of Ghana, but you process, so you use a machine, maybe you have a server locally in Ghana, or you use a third party to process information in Ghana, you are mandated to register. If you are not in Ghana, but you collect personal information of people who are living in Ghana, wholly or partly, you are also mandated by law to register. So institutions like the Facebooks, you know, the Googles and all those large international bodies are supposed to do that. Another thing that we're doing to ensure compliance, of course, there's always the question of, look, these people are not in Ghana. If they infringe, how are you going to protect, you know, their information? And what we have is that we have the power to set up, to join other bodies. So currently, Ghana has been accredited as part of an international conference of data protection commissioners, call them regulators around the world. And so over there, we have an arrangement for enforcement cooperation. And so if there is a situation where I'm having a particular challenge with an infringement, but the person happens to be located in any of these other jurisdictions in the world, we can use our relationship on these platforms to also ensure compliance. Because of the technology and the nature, you will see that the laws across the world are quite similar. In fact, when it comes to what we call the data protection principles, they are the same across board. That is, collect the information with consent, purpose, protection, you know, security. Those are similar. So it becomes very easy, you know, to use our sister organizations around the world to also ensure compliance. So that's what we are doing. Okay. But ultimately, like you heard in the documentary, the best person to protect one's information is you and nobody else.
I agree 100% to that. But Maximus, how far can someone go with my data? How bad can they deal with my data, mess it up and do everything that I can do nothing about? It's out of my hands.
No, you see, it depends on the value they see in the data they are going to mine from you. Now, according to research, companies are going to spend close to $500 billion. Okay, trying to protect data and securing their systems from breaches. If there's vulnerabilities, they are going to access. If you have a data center, for example, in a particular location, some people want to access those information, to mine them, to use it for whatever they want to use it for. Okay, so it depends on, the extent depends on how protected your data is. So if you are giving your data to somebody who cannot protect it, then you are in the mess, because somebody else will breach whatever vulnerability or exploit whatever vulnerability they have in terms of protection, and they can use your data for anything.
But we are in this era of hacking.
Yeah, that's where security is. Me, for example, I always tell people that the internet does not forget. That's one thing. So any content you push online will always be there with your own permission. Now, what you keep private to yourself is the most secured of all.
You know what's funny? I'm thinking my head is the only pen drive I can trust. I can't trust any other system, because the moment I write it, you pick this paper, you see what I've written, and you can use it.
Because, for example, I was talking with somebody who goes like, okay, in our company, from the door to the server, there's codes that you have to key in, you have to use cards to swipe and all that. I said, okay, but the concept of the fifth pillar, what they call the human being, you can use all the passwords, but the passwords are in people's heads. So somebody can give the password to somebody and they can exploit your system.
Okay.
So the human aspect of data protection is very key, and that's where trust comes in. So you must trust the person you are giving your data to. You must trust that they have the competence to protect it, and they will abide by it, because if they see the value in selling your data more than keeping it, and they don't have the integrity, they will sell your data.
Yes, but on the issue of selling data, I mean, in Ghana, in other jurisdictions, it's permitted within certain conditions, but in Ghana is expressly prohibited under our laws. So you are not allowed under the laws of Ghana to actually sell personal information of any individual. I just wanted to clarify that.
It's good to hear that, but I think people are finding ways around it.
Oh, yes.
And they are still doing has the commission thought about how to deal with that? Or those people fall under a particular section of the act?
No, it's a criminal act. So the moment we definitely get to know of it, we will take action. Like I mentioned, we have enforcement actions and all of that. And so we will definitely take action on it, yes.
So what are some of the enforcement actions you have?
For instance, if there's a data breach and maybe someone's data has been compromised, is being used for the purpose for which they've not allowed, first of all, those individuals can alert you to stop it. If you don't, we can then come in and then give an enforcement order for you to stop. If you do not, then we can take the criminal leg of it and then take it to court and seek some kind of criminal liability for the actions you've taken. Also, we have the power to investigate complaints that have been made by members of the public. So those are some of the areas that we also focus on. And then the only thing we don't do is issue fines. You know, we don't issue fines, but we can, if there are any data breaches, we can bring a person to order. We also have the right to come in and tell you how you should adequately protect the data. So, for instance, if there's a data, we can shut your whole operations down if we find out that data, you're not, taking adequate measures to protect the personal information you're collecting.
Okay, so have you investigated any cases yet?
No, we just started. In fact, we just started our registration in May, and we've given a 3-month window in accordance with what the law had said, which expires in July. So for now, our focus is more on what do you call it? Education, both the data controllers, exactly, and the data subjects, that is the individuals whose information we collect. So it's more of education now. Give us a couple more years. Yes, because we believe that it's a very technical area.
Yes.
And so generally we have to bring all our stakeholders on board to really appreciate. Of course, that does not mean that in extreme situations we will not enforce the laws. Because if there's been serious damage to individuals, then we will push for the enforcement of the laws. But in terms of our strategic plan, we just want all our key stakeholders, that's the data controllers,
How many years are we looking at?
Give us 2 years.
2 years?
Yes. So it does not mean that we will not be enforcing
within that period.
Within that period, we expect that we would have done enough education. We expect that most of our stakeholders now really appreciate the extent to it. But during this period, what is currently happening is that for those who have registered with us, every year, the registration is valid for 2 years. And so once the public register is up, you can go online and check the validity. You would know when we registered them as data controllers and when their registration expires. It's for 2 years, but every year we require all data controllers to file a compliance report. And this compliance report will look at, it's kind of like an audit of your system. and it includes privacy impact assessments of your organization's work. So if there are any issues that, you know, have come up, we can look at it, and the whole essence is to also help these organizations, you know, comply with the laws.
But within that period, would you be checking on them? Would you be auditing them as well, so that when someone is going wayward or an institution is going wayward, you can quickly get them off the register?
Yes, and in fact, the public, what is happening is that the public system is already up, so the public can make complaints, and the public complaints have started from as far back as a couple of years ago. So the public can still, you know, make complaints to us. The only thing that happens is that when a complaint is made, we look into it and we try to resolve it. So those ones will still be doing.
Okay, so what about the hacking of the Government of Ghana website? That one is gone with the wind. Is that what you're saying? We've not started anything, so we can't go back. No. I just want to see if we can go back and then treat some of these cases as criminal cases, as they happened outside before you started work. But can you go back and
look at those issues? Like I mentioned, all these agencies, including all government agencies, are mandated by the law to register with us. Okay. So the best way, of course, we also work with government, and so we've been working with all these governmental agencies to ensure that adequate security is put in place. To be honest with you, I think it's the real problem with data protection is just getting people to really appreciate the extent of it. I think that is the best way that we can ultimately, you know, yield best results. Not so much the cracking of the whip now, because a lot of people do not appreciate. So we're working with all these key stakeholders, government, bodies, individuals that are collecting large amounts of data, because the interest to us is that the information is protected, not so much that we can punish. But it does not mean that in extreme situations we're going to just, you know, we will crack the whip if need be.
We'll take another break, but when we come back, we'll talk about best practices in data protection. We're back on PM Express. We're talking data protection, and I have in the studio two experts who are explaining things, and I think I'm getting somewhere with what I need to do to protect my data, and you should do the same. What are the best practices when it comes to data protection?
When you say best practices, just clarify a little bit for me. What exactly are you looking at?
Aside the rights, the obligations, I know it has started in other countries way before we are starting now. And so there is a way of doing things. What are we doing? Are we doing the same as that, or we have carved it, adopted and adapted to suit our situation here in Ghana? What are we doing?
Okay, we've adapted to suit our situation, but the law itself was developed looking at best practices around the world. Our model is quite similar to what the UK has in place, and we've modeled similar to theirs because we have similar legislative frameworks in legal systems in place. So that's definitely, and like I mentioned earlier, this is an area where it's all about bringing us together and breaking those barriers of jurisdiction or geographical, you know, barriers that generally prevent us from enforcing issues related to the internet when you're looking at enforcement locally. So when it comes to the legislations, they are similar. I can say that they are similar across the world. You know, you'll find similar other African countries who are also implementing similar. And so we've benchmarked against some of the best practices around the world. Those are the frameworks on which the law was developed.
Okay, so if I give my consent for you to use my data I have given you willingly, how do I withdraw that you can't use it anymore? I gave it to you, but now I don't want you to use it.
So first of all, before you take anybody's information, the law requires that you also tell them who you are, where you are, etc. So that information that you give to that individual, that is what enables them. So they use those same channels to come back to you. So if, for instance, I am giving my information to you, maybe by the roadside, and I don't have any other way of getting back to you, clearly that is not in conformance with the law.
Are we doing that? Are we doing that here?
You mean collecting information by the
roadside?
I know that some time ago we were registering, SIM cards,
okay.
By individuals. People were registering on behalf of. So those are some of it. But at least we know that the information was for a particular body. But we have to do a lot better by ensuring that it's quite clear where the information is going. If I want to withdraw my consent on processing, should I do it? And
how
all
should
of
I
that.
do it?
And then can I add? The other thing is, you see, you go to some companies, for example, and they ask you to sign the book, the visitor's book.
Yes.
Yeah.
You put your full name, and then your company name, your phone number, your email address, and your signature.
Yes.
I think that has to be stopped. What do you think?
They may need the information for a purpose.
Okay.
In accordance with the law doesn't stop you from doing that. The only thing is that if you're taking that information, then I need to know why you're taking that information. And the law says that the information must be relevant and not excessive. So if the purpose for which you're collecting it, let me just give an example. It's just a basic thing of knowing who came in here, for instance. I don't know what you need my signature for. Maybe the number would be adequate. So in those cases, you can say that the purpose for which you're collecting the information is excessive, And those are some of the issues that you can put into streamline. But we as a commission will not come in to say stop, but then you should look at your organization and see, because the moment you take that information, you become a data controller, and there are certain obligations on you to comply. What I have always been worried about, so whenever I visit any such place, I never put my personal number there, and I will never sign. I'll probably just scribble something. Is that a lot of the time it may be even a security officer who does not even work for these. So how trained are these agencies, and what is the nature of the contract that even exists between them and then the subcontractor and then the person who's contracting them to do these jobs,
And some of those books are left there.
Yes.
Somebody can have access to
At the
them.
reception.
You don't know whether
security gate.
the companies keep them or is the security companies who manage the front doors. They keep those things.
So those are some of the issues that once it starts coming up, once we're doing the auditing, you find out what exactly, you go through the process. How is this information protected? So if we realize that it's not adequately protected, then you can, initiate some kind of sanctions. In those circumstances, we can ask you to stop collecting that information and then properly dispose of all the information that you've collected. And talking about disposing of that just brings this to mind. I mean, even how you dispose of the data that you collect is also very important for us.
So it doesn't get into the hands of the wrong.
Yes, because you know that even a hard drive, throwing a hard drive away or computer away is not, enough to discard information on a computer. So for companies that will say that, okay, we've completed using this information, then they just go and dump it somewhere or donate it to some school and all of that. You have to look at data security measures that are put in place too.
So, for instance, if I'm coming to, I am coming here as a visitor and I'm not allowed in because I won't sign the visitor's book or put a contact number there, who do I seek redress from? I'll be prevented from entering this place, but then what? I'll be 1 in 1,000 who is refusing to do that, so I'll lose.
I have had situations where I've refused to, and let me not just go the situation you're talking about is very simple. Look at apps, applications that we use on our phones and all of that. You know, there was a very good application that I really wanted badly. I stopped after I read the privacy policy. I stopped, you know, I just didn't use it, you know. So it's ultimately an individual choice. What is the cost of the information that you are given? You know, and what I also advise people is that sometimes you can give when you know you're not sure that the information will be protected, don't give.
We are giving away so much without knowing how it can be used.
If I give you a wrong name and sign wrongly and write the wrong phone number, you can't check.
Yeah.
So
that protects you.
That protects me. Yeah, I can mess up the digits and then we'll go to someone else.
Yeah, but there are times you have to give the correct information.
Yeah.
But
that is if you know what it's being
in those
used
situations, that's why the register is there. You have the right, so you can demand. And if you demand and they are not complying, you can always come to the commission.
I wonder how accessible this register will be, but we want you viewers out there to join us in this conversation on data protection, and then you can ask all your questions. And I have been educated, I hope you have too, but you can ask questions and then we'll get the answers for you from here. As the number is scrolling on your screen, you can call in now and it will attend to your answers. Let's talk about the register. Yeah. How accessible is that going to be? Where will I find the register? On the internet?
It will be on our website. Okay. It will be from the 31st of July, because we just started, like I mentioned, registering data compiling. So we're still compiling, but by after the 31st is the deadline. So we're hoping that all those who are eager to comply with the data protection would have registered. And so any individual at all can go to the website. It's free. You just type in the name of the organization or individual, you know, and you would see the information. You would see who they are, the address, the information that they process, you know. Yes.
All right. So we have our first caller on the line. Anne, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to PM Express.
Good evening.
Anne, what do you have to say about data protection?
Well, I work with one of the non-bank financial institutions. I think the education did not go out well for some of us. We were there when we had a letter from them.
And
so how I called the institution to find out if they have information about that at all. Then I was amazed that some hadn't.
Okay.
So what I did was to go on the online, and then I read the whole thing.
Okay.
And what I did was that I got in contact with them and for further explanation, which they did.
Okay.
And we were told to register. But after the registration, the amount that they were charging, I was like, wow.
Okay.
It was so much.
It comes with a cost.
Yes. So I'm asking if the amount can be reduced somehow. Because for us, we were asked to pay 1,500 Ghana cedis.
Okay. Yes. All right. Anne, thank you very much for your contribution. Taking you notes that we'll come back. We have Bernard also on the line. Hello, Bernard.
Hello.
Welcome to PM Express.
Thank you. Good evening.
Where are you calling from, Bernard?
I think the topic that I think is very, very interesting.
Okay.
I am very, very excited that I'm able to watch. Yes. I'm going to find out whether the data protection policy that you're discussing tonight is available to the public, and how can I have access?
Say that again.
More and
The policy
understand.
document, the act.
Available for it.
Okay. All right. So we can, thank you very much, Bernard. We can talk about Bernard and Anne's questions, and then we move on. So Anne is worried about the cost.
Yes, thank you, Anne, for contacting us, and the Commission is always ready to come in and then help you. In terms of the cost, you know, we estimated based on some sectors, especially the financial sector collects large amounts of data, and the registration is to support our operations.
Okay.
You know, this is the amount that will help us monitor and evaluate and even educate. You're complaining about, you know, getting enough, but one of the challenges we've had, especially during these trying times in our country, is raising the needed funds to go across and educate everybody. Of course, we've used other means like other...
Kindly hold it there for me. We have Ruben on the line. He's been on the line for a while. Hello, Ruben. Hello, Ruben.
Hello, yes.
Good evening. Welcome to PM Express.
Yeah. I'm the system administrator of my company, and I'm interested by the topic you were discussing about, and also my company wants to be part of this commission, and also I myself am interested by this commission. I want to be part of it too. I want to know the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Teki will give you the process before we go and give you contacts so you can reach them. Thank you very much. So you can go on with the cost.
Yes, so we have 3 categories of fees. Like I said, the registration is for 2 years. What we call large data controllers, that includes all financial institutions, and that's because of the nature and of information and large amounts of information that they collect as financial institutions.
Okay.
So for those ones, they pay 1,500 cedis for 2 years. You know, the medium data controllers, that is, if you collect personal information of more than let's say less than 250 people, but more than 50 people, you pay 750 Ghana cedis. You know that the fees are not exorbitant. The idea is not to, you know, cripple institutions by requiring them to register. But we need the funds to also run our operations, so that's why that's 750. And then we have the small data controllers. They pay 100 cedis for the 2 years, and those are people who collect information on less than 50 people a year. Yes, but the financial institutions, once you're a financial institution, you fall within the large, and maybe that's why she's complaining.
Okay, we have Joseph on the line. Hello, Joseph. Oh, we've lost Joseph. Now we were talking, Bernard wanted to know about the Act and how available
yes,
that is.
The Act, if you visit our website, www.dataprotection.org.gh, we have a copy of the Act available, and several other information that you can read, which will be of help. And then in terms of the processes, you know, you can always contact our offices. I don't know what kind of, you know, he mentioned that he wanted to be a part. I'm not clear on what exactly he's looking at, but once you call our offices, we'll be able to assist
We'll put
you.
out the number before we go, so those who don't have access to internet can at least call the office. But we have Felix on the line. Hello, Felix.
Hello.
Welcome to PM Express.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much. In fact, I want to find out by keeping the data or protecting the data, how exactly are they going to do it? Or are you supposed to give them your data or your records that they will keep for you, or what? I do not really understand. If you can clarify.
Okay. Okay, so we have Lawrence also on the line. Hello, Lawrence.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to ask the madam in the glasses that you're looking for a job and you give your data, and after working for some time, and you retire.
Okay.
Do they give you your document, or it must still remain with them?
Where?
Hello, Lawrence.
Yes.
Say that again. You work with a company, you give them your data, you have retired. Must they give it to you or they keep it?
Whenever.
Okay.
Whenever.
Okay, ask your question again.
And then if you are looking for a job,
Yes.
and then you're giving your data to your employer,
Mm-hmm.
you work for some time and then you retire.
Yes.
Would they still keep your data, or they should give it to you?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Lawrence from Winneba. We'll take a quick break from here. When we come back, we'll answer all your questions on data protection. All right. We're wrapping up on PM Express, but Teke will answer the questions and then we'll take our final words and we're out of here. So.
Okay, thank you. For Felix, we don't protect the data. You don't bring anyone's personal data to us. What you do is that we only ensure that those people who collect your data protect the data adequately. And we ensure that by making sure that they register with us, they tell us the measures they put in place, and then every year we audit them, they bring us their audit reports, and then we also investigate if you make complaints to us. For Lawrence, the data retention policies depend on the companies and then several other laws. You know, there may be some organizations where, for instance, after you retire, they may have to keep the information for a specified period. And so for us, what we monitor them to do is to ensure that they are keeping the information or retaining the information within those parameters that the law allows them to. I know for employees, usually they keep it up to a certain time after you retire. So that's what I have to say.
That's about it. The calls that came in, you reacting to any of them? Or she's taking...
She's done that. And I think basically the protection starts from you, the individual, the one giving the data to the person who's supposed to protect you. And if you want your data to be wiped out, or you don't want anybody to use your data, I'm sure if you subscribe to a particular service, you have to terminate that contract for your data to be wiped out. And we have to be very clear that the one you are giving your data to uses the data as agreed. Okay? So when you give somebody your name, your phone number, your email address, and date of birth and all that, you must make sure they are using it for the right purposes. If not, I'm sure you have to go to the commission and make a report. Otherwise, don't also make your private information public.
Okay, I won't make my private information public. But take it before we go. I'm getting unsolicited texts and the nuisance and all that. How is the commission going to help me get rid of them?
First of all, the law clearly frowns against that. It says that, you know, we should not send any kind of direct marketing information without the express consent. So the first thing that I would ask is whether you yourself have, you know, allowed them or have given the consent for that information to be sent. If you have, what we require is that that same organization should give you a channel to require them to stop.
Okay.
And in fact, after we started our operations, we got a number of public complaints on those issues, and we contacted the respective bodies and organizations, and it ceased. So if you also have a complaint on that, you can always, you know, send it to the commission. Yes.
Thank you very much, Teki and Maximus, for being on PM Express, and we've been talking data protection. We wish we have more time to talk, but we can't go any further than this. But I'm sure we'll have this conversation again. My name is Martha Krensolakwa.